Introduction. What if the world's most heavily guarded military stronghold wasn't as invincible as everyone believed? For years, Russia has poured billions into transforming Crimea into a fortress layer upon layer of radars, fighter jets, and air defense systems, all designed to send a clear message: this territory is untouchable. But in the dead of night, that illusion was shattered. In a single, stunning operation, Ukraine managed to do what many thought impossible, striking deep into the heart of Crimea and leaving a trail of smoldering wreckage where Russia's unstoppable weapons once stood. The scale of destruction wasn't just a blow to military hardware. It was a direct hit to the image of Russian dominance that Vladimir Putin has worked so hard to project. As the sun rose over the Black Sea, the world woke up to reports of a daring Ukrainian airstrike that had left Russia scrambling for answers. Fighter jets worth tens of millions, advanced radar systems, and entire air defense units all wiped out in a matter of hours. The financial cost alone was staggering, but the psychological impact ran even deeper. Suddenly, the myth of Crimea's security was exposed for what it really was: a fragile shield, vulnerable to the kind of precision and planning that Ukraine has been quietly perfecting. But how did Ukraine pull off such a devastating blow right under Russia's nose? And what does this mean for the future of Crimea, a region that has become the centerpiece of Putin's ambitions? The answers are as shocking as the strike itself, and they reveal a new chapter in a conflict that's far from over. What happened on that fateful night in Crimea wasn't just another attack. It was a message, sent loud and clear, that nowhere is truly safe, not even the most fortified bases of a superpower. And as the dust settles, one question hangs in the air: if Russia's strongest defenses can be breached, what's next for the war in Ukraine? The night Crimea lit up in the early hours before dawn, while most of Crimea slept, the sky above the Belbek Airfield erupted in a spectacle that would send shockwaves far beyond the peninsula. It wasn't just another routine skirmish or a minor drone incursion. This was a meticulously coordinated assault, the kind that military strategists study for years. Ukraine's long-range drones, operated by the elite Alpha Special Operations Center of the SBU, slipped through the darkness, guided by intelligence and nerves of steel. Their mission: to strike at the very core of Russia's air power in Crimea. The attack unfolded with surgical precision. One by one, the drones zeroed in on their targets, unleashing a barrage that lit up the night sky and left Russian defenses scrambling. The Belbek Airfield, a site Russia had long considered a safe haven for its most valuable military assets, was suddenly transformed into a battlefield. Explosions echoed across Sevastopol as flames engulfed fighter jets, radar installations, and air defense systems. For those on the ground, the chaos was immediate and overwhelming. Alarms blared. Emergency crews rushed to contain the inferno, and the once imposing silhouette of Russian military might was reduced to burning wreckage. What made this strike so extraordinary wasn't just the destruction itself, but the message it sent. Russia had invested heavily in making Crimea a fortress, believing its advanced technology and layered defenses could repel any threat. Yet, in a matter of hours, Ukraine's drones had exposed glaring vulnerabilities, bypassing supposedly impenetrable barriers and delivering a blow that would be felt at the highest levels of the Kremlin. The operation wasn't just about inflicting damage, it was about shattering the myth of Russian invincibility in Crimea. As the smoke cleared, the scale of the devastation became apparent. Fighter jets worth tens of millions, state-of-the-art radar systems, and entire air defense units had been wiped out in a single night. The world watched in disbelief as images surfaced captured by the very drones that carried out the attack, showing the aftermath of Ukraine's audacious strike. For Russia, it was a night of humiliation and loss. For Ukraine, it was proof that even the most fortified strongholds can be breached with the right mix of courage, technology, and strategy. But the story of that night doesn't end with the destruction. It marks the beginning of a new phase in the conflict, one where the rules of engagement are being rewritten, and the balance of power in Crimea is suddenly up for grabs. Counting the cost. Russia's price tag. When the smoke finally cleared over Belbek Airfield, the true scale of Russia's losses began to emerge, and the numbers were nothing short of staggering. In just a few hours, Ukraine had managed to obliterate hundreds of millions of dollars worth of military hardware, leaving the Kremlin with a bill that would make even the world's wealthiest nations wince. But this wasn't just about money. Each destroyed asset represented a critical piece of Russia's military puzzle, painstakingly assembled over years and now reduced to twisted metal and ash. At the top of the list was the MiG-31, a fighter jet often described as the crown jewel of Russia's Air Force, with a price tag of up to $50 million. This supersonic interceptor wasn't just expensive, it was a symbol of Russian air superiority, designed to hunt down enemy aircraft and missiles at blistering speeds. According to Ukraine's SBU, the MiG-31 targeted in the strike was fully loaded and ready for action, likely preparing for a mission against Ukrainian targets. Its destruction wasn't just a financial blow, it was a direct hit to Russia's ability to control the skies over Crimea. But the losses didn't stop there. Ukraine's drones also took out two Nebos VU radar systems, each valued between $60 and $100 million. These high-tech radars served as the eyes of Russia's air defense network, capable of tracking up to 100 targets at once and coordinating the response of fighter jets and missile batteries. With both systems destroyed, Russia's ability to detect and respond to incoming threats was severely compromised, leaving a gaping hole in the peninsula's defenses. Adding to the devastation was the destruction of a Pantsir II air defense system, worth another $12 million. This short-range system was designed to be the last line of defense against low-flying drones and missiles. But on this night, it was no match for Ukraine's relentless assault. And then there was the 9-2N6 radar, a crucial component of the S-400 air defense system, valued at $30 million. Its loss meant that an entire battery of S-400s, some of the most advanced surface-to-air missiles in Russia's arsenal, was left blind and vulnerable. All told, the estimated cost of the night's destruction hovered around $200 million, a sum that would take years to replace, even for a military as vast as Russia's. But perhaps the most telling detail was Ukraine's rare decision to publicly celebrate the strike. The SBU, usually tight-lipped about its operations, shared images and details of the attack on social media, signaling just how significant this victory was. For Russia, the financial loss was painful. For Ukraine, it was a statement. No matter how much money the Kremlin pours into Crimea, nowhere is truly safe. And as the world took stock of the damage, one thing became clear: this was more than just a costly night for Russia. It was a turning point, one that would force Moscow to rethink its entire approach to defending Crimea. Why these losses matter on the surface. The destruction of a few jets and radar systems might seem like just another headline in a long and brutal war. But the reality is far more significant. Each piece of equipment lost at Belbek Airfield wasn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It was a vital link in Russia's chain of command, surveillance, and defense. The MiG-31, for example, wasn't just any fighter jet. It was a rare, high-speed interceptor, designed to hunt down enemy aircraft and missiles at altitudes and speeds that few others could match. Its presence in Crimea was a clear signal that Russia was prepared to defend the peninsula with its very best. Now, with that jet reduced to smoldering debris, a critical layer of air defense has been stripped away, but the impact goes even deeper. The Nebos VU radar systems, often called the eyes of Russia's air defense, played a central role in detecting and tracking threats across vast distances. These radars could spot incoming drones, missiles, or aircraft from hundreds of kilometers away, giving Russian forces precious minutes to react. With two of these systems destroyed, Russia's ability to see what's coming has been dramatically reduced. Suddenly, the skies over Crimea are less predictable, and every blip on the radar becomes a source of anxiety for Russian commanders. Then there's the 9-2N6 radar, a linchpin of the S-400 air defense system. This advanced radar didn't just help guide missiles to their targets, it was the nerve center for one of the most feared anti-aircraft systems in the world. Without it, the S-400 battery at Belbek is effectively blind, unable to track or engage threats with any real accuracy. For Russia, this means that a cornerstone of its air defense strategy has been knocked out in a single, well-placed strike. And let's not forget the Pantsir II, a system designed to be the last line of defense against low-flying threats. Its destruction means that even if something managed to slip past the long-range radars and missile batteries, there's now one less obstacle standing between Ukraine's drones and their targets. The cumulative effect of losing all these systems in one night is devastating. It's not just about the hardware, it's about the sudden vulnerability that now hangs over one of Russia's most important military outposts. For Ukraine, this strike was about more than just inflicting damage. It was a calculated move to weaken Russia's grip on Crimea, to show that even the most fortified positions can be breached. For Russia, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that no amount of technology or investment can guarantee safety in a war where innovation and daring are rewriting the rules. The loss of these assets doesn't just hurt Russia's ability to defend Crimea, it shakes the very foundation of its military strategy in the region, and as the dust settles, both sides are left to grapple with a new reality, one where the balance of power in Crimea is shifting, and the next move could change the course of the conflict entirely. How did Ukraine pull it off? The question on everyone's mind after the Belbek Airfield strike was simple. How did Ukraine managed to breach what was supposed to be one of the most secure military installations in the region? The answer lies in a blend of cutting-edge technology, meticulous planning, and a willingness to take risks that few would dare. While the SBU has kept the finer details of its operation under wraps, enough has surfaced to piece together a picture of a mission that was as bold as it was brilliant. First, timing was everything. The operation was launched in the dead of night, a window when Russian air defense crews were least alert and most likely to be caught off guard. Under the cover of darkness, Ukraine's long-range drones, piloted by the elite Alpha Special Operations Center, traveled hundreds of kilometers, slipping past patrols and electronic surveillance. These weren't just off-the-shelf drones. They were likely equipped with advanced navigation systems, stealth features, and the ability to fly low and slow, hugging the terrain to avoid radar detection. But technology alone wasn't enough. The real genius of the operation was in the sequence of the attack. According to reports, Ukraine's drones first targeted the Nebos VU radars, the very systems designed to spot incoming threats from afar. By taking out these eyes at the start, Ukraine blinded the rest of the base's defenses, making it far easier for subsequent waves of drones to reach their targets. Once the radars were down, the next strike focused on the 9-N6 radar, the nerve center of the S-400 air defense system. With this critical component destroyed, Russia's most advanced missile battery was left firing blindly, if it could fire at all. The final blows came swiftly. The Panzerist Hue, which could have provided a last line of defense, was neutralized, leaving the base almost completely exposed. Only then did Ukraine's drones move in on the MiG-31, turning the prized fighter jet into a fireball that lit up the night sky. Each step of the operation was carefully calculated, designed to dismantle Russia's layered defenses piece by piece, until nothing stood between Ukraine's drones and their high-value targets. Speculation has swirled online about how Ukraine managed to evade so many layers of security. Some analysts suggest that electronic warfare played a role, with Ukrainian forces possibly jamming or spoofing Russian radars to create gaps in coverage. Others point to the possibility of insider intelligence, with local informants providing real-time updates on Russian patrols and air defense readiness. While none of these theories have been confirmed, what's clear is that Ukraine's approach combined both brains and bravery, leveraging every available advantage to pull off a strike that few thought possible. This operation didn't just showcase Ukraine's growing prowess in drone warfare, it sent a message to military planners everywhere. The old rules no longer apply. In a world where technology evolves by the day and information flows faster than ever, even the most fortified bases can be brought to their knees by those willing to innovate and adapt. And as Russia scrambles to patch the holes in its defenses, Ukraine's success at Belbek stands as a stark warning. The next strike could come at any time, from any direction, and no one is truly untouchable. How did Ukraine pull it off? The question on everyone's mind after the Belbek Airfield strike was simple. How did Ukraine manage to breach what was supposed to be one of the most secure military installations in the region? The answer lies in a blend of cutting-edge technology, meticulous planning, and a willingness to take risks that few would dare. While the SBU has kept the finer details of its operation under wraps, enough has surfaced to piece together a picture of a mission that was as bold as it was brilliant. First, timing was everything. The operation was launched in the dead of night, a window when Russian air defense crews were least alert and most likely to be caught off guard. Under the cover of darkness, Ukraine's long-range drones, piloted by the elite Alpha Special Operations Center, traveled hundreds of kilometers, slipping past patrols and electronic surveillance. These weren't just off-the-shelf drones. They were likely equipped with advanced navigation systems, stealth features, and the ability to fly low and slow, hugging the terrain to avoid radar detection. But technology alone wasn't enough. The real genius of the operation was in the sequence of the attack. According to reports, Ukraine's drones first targeted the Nebos VU radars, the very systems designed to spot incoming threats from afar. By taking out these eyes at the start, Ukraine blinded the rest of the base's defenses, making it far easier for subsequent waves of drones to reach their targets. Once the radars were down, the next strike focused on the 9-N6 radar, the nerve center of the S-400 air defense system. With this critical component destroyed, Russia's most advanced missile battery was left firing blindly, if it could fire at all. The final blows came swiftly. The Panzerist Hu, which could have provided a last line of defense, was neutralized, leaving the base almost completely exposed. Only then did Ukraine's drones move in on the MiG-31, turning the prized fighter jet into a fireball that lit up the night sky. Each step of the operation was carefully calculated, designed to dismantle Russia's layered defenses piece by piece, until nothing stood between Ukraine's drones and their high-value targets. Speculation has swirled online about how Ukraine managed to evade so many layers of security. Some analysts suggest that electronic warfare played a role, with Ukrainian forces possibly jamming or spoofing Russian radars to create gaps in coverage. Others point to the possibility of insider intelligence, with local informants providing real-time updates on Russian patrols and air defense readiness. While none of these theories have been confirmed, what's clear is that Ukraine's approach combined both brains and bravery, leveraging every available advantage to pull off a strike that few thought possible. This operation didn't just showcase Ukraine's growing prowess in drone warfare, it sent a message to military planners everywhere. The old rules no longer apply. In a world where technology evolves by the day and information flows faster than ever, even the most fortified bases can be brought to their knees by those willing to innovate and adapt. And as Russia scrambles to patch the holes in its defenses, Ukraine's success at Belbek stands as a stark warning. The next strike could come at any time, from any direction, and no one is truly untouchable. Putin's dilemma, holding on to Crimea for Vladimir Putin. Crimea has always been more than just a strategic outpost, it's a symbol of power, a trophy seized in 2014 and paraded as proof of Russia's resurgence on the world stage. But with every successful Ukrainian strike, that symbol is starting to look more like a liability than an asset. The recent devastation at Belbek Airfield has forced the Kremlin into a corner, exposing the uncomfortable truth that even Russia's most prized territory is vulnerable. Now, Putin faces a dilemma that grows more complicated with each passing day. How much longer can he justify the enormous cost of holding on to Crimea? The financial toll alone is staggering. Replacing the destroyed jets, radars, and air defense systems will require not just money, but time and resources that Russia can scarcely afford as the war drags on. But the real cost is measured in something far more valuable than rubles: the credibility of Russia's military machine. Every time Ukraine breaches Crimea's defenses, it chips away at the myth of Russian invincibility, sending a message to both allies and adversaries that the Kremlin's grip is slipping. For a leader who has built his reputation on strength and control, this is a humiliation that cannot be easily hidden. Inside Russia, the pressure is mounting. Reports have surfaced of growing unease among military officials, some of whom are said to be questioning the wisdom of pouring more resources into a region that seems increasingly indefensible. Meanwhile, Russian civilians living in Crimea are beginning to feel the strain. Once promised safety and prosperity, they now find themselves living under the constant threat of attack, their daily routines disrupted by air raid sirens and the distant rumble of explosions. The Kremlin's attempts to downplay the situation, insisting that Crimea remains a safe, holiday destination, ring hollow in the face of mounting evidence to the contrary. Internationally, the stakes are just as high. Each Ukrainian success in Crimea emboldens Kyiv's allies, encouraging them to provide more support and advanced weaponry. At the same time, it sows doubt among Russia's partners, some of whom may begin to question whether backing Putin's campaign is worth the risk. The narrative is shifting, and with it, the perception of Russia's strength on the global stage. Speculation is swirling about what comes next. Some analysts suggest that if Ukraine continues to erode Russia's military presence in Crimea, the Kremlin may eventually be forced to make a difficult choice: double down and risk even greater losses, or begin a quiet withdrawal to avoid further embarrassment. Neither option is appealing for Putin, who has staked so much of his legacy on the peninsula's fate. For now, the Russian president remains defiant, insisting that Crimea will remain under Moscow's control. But behind the bravado, the reality is clear. Ukrainian strike makes that promise harder to keep. The dilemma is no longer just about military strategy. It's about the very future of Putin's rule and the image of Russia itself. As the world watches, the question lingers: how much longer can the Kremlin afford to hold on to a prize that's becoming more costly and more dangerous by the day? Conclusion: the beginning of the end. As the dust settles over the shattered remains of Belbek Airfield, a new reality is taking shape in Crimea, one that neither Russia nor the world can ignore. The latest Ukrainian strike wasn't just a tactical victory or a momentary setback for the Kremlin. It was a signal that the rules of the conflict are changing, and that the once unthinkable is now within reach. For years, Crimea stood as a symbol of Russian dominance, a fortress bristling with advanced weaponry and guarded by layers of defenses. But in a single night, that illusion was pierced, and the myth of invulnerability was replaced by a stark sense of uncertainty. The implications of this attack stretch far beyond the immediate destruction of jets and radars. Each successful Ukrainian operation in Crimea chips away at the foundation of Russia's control, forcing Moscow to confront the uncomfortable truth that its grip on the peninsula is slipping. The psychological impact on Russian troops and civilians is profound. Suddenly, nowhere feels truly safe, and the specter of future strikes looms large over daily life. For Ukraine, the Belbek operation is more than just a headline. It's a blueprint for how to keep pushing the boundaries, exploiting every weakness, and turning the tide in a conflict that has too often seemed frozen in place. But perhaps the most important consequence is the message sent to the world. Allies and adversaries alike are watching closely, recalibrating their expectations and strategies in light of Ukraine's growing capabilities. The West sees proof that its support is making a difference, while Russia's partners are left to wonder whether the Kremlin can deliver on its promises of security and stability. The balance of power in the Black Sea region is shifting, and with each new strike, the possibility of a dramatic change in Crimea's status grows more real. Yet, for all the shock and awe of the Belbek strike, the future remains uncertain. Will Russia double down, pouring even more resources into defending a territory that's becoming harder to hold? Or will the mounting costs and risks force the Kremlin to reconsider its ambitions, opening the door to negotiations, or even a strategic withdrawal? No one can say for sure. What is clear, however, is that the era of complacency in Crimea is over. The peninsula is no longer a safe haven, it's a battleground where every day brings new risks and new opportunities. As Ukraine continues its campaign, the world is left to ponder a question that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. Is this the beginning of the end for Russia's hold on Crimea, or is it merely the opening act in a much larger struggle for the future of the region? One thing is certain: the story of Crimea is far from finished, and the next chapter promises to be even more unpredictable than the last.